our good friend Scott Braddock, editor of quorumreport.com. Scott, good evening. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Chad. Much better than last week when I thought that I might cough myself to death. It was terrible. I think it's the swing in the weather.
Yeah.
I like when the whole day cools down, not just part of the day.
Yes.
You would think that if it's going to be 61 degrees in the morning, that maybe it wouldn't get up to 99 in the afternoon. It's the swing in it that affects me. Anyway, feeling much better.
Good.
Got a few meds in me. Good to go.
That's good. Good to hear from you. Glad you're doing better. Thanks for joining us today. Let's start off. Early voting continuing this week for the November 4th election.
Yeah.
What are you hearing when it comes to, in particular, this water proposition, establishing a big water fund? This is something that lawmakers really talked about, at least in the Senate, for quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, and legislators from Lubbock in particular, right? Senator Charles Perry led the charge on this. Remember, going back to January, and before that, really, but at the beginning of the legislative session back in January, Perry tried to make clear, he was making the case, and I'm sure you talked to him about it at the time. He was saying that this legislative session, this regular session this year, would be the last chance, as he put it, for lawmakers to really get in front of, to kind of get the jump on, what some of the state's big water needs really are. We have a population that continues to grow rapidly. We also have those big data centers, those, doing so much of the AI now that are just really chugging water. Like it's going out of style. And so those needs are there. Industrial needs are there. Just residential needs as well. And we have no real reliable funding stream to pay for those kinds of projects. And I was talking about this on Quorum Report Radio on our podcast yesterday. And Chad, I was thinking about it in terms of getting people excited about water infrastructure is like getting people excited about having oatmeal for breakfast, right? Yeah. And now I like it, but I had a friend say, well, what if you were dealing with the fact that some people were trying to tell folks that the oatmeal is full of poison? Because here's the other thing that's happening. As some have pointed out, there are some very conservative groups as well as some local county GOPs, and I know you've probably seen some of this in West Texas, telling folks to vote no on this when Republican leadership, including the lieutenant governor, the speaker, the governor, is telling everybody to vote for all of the propositions. But some of those groups are divided on these things, right? Or they're split on these different things. And so while they might want you to vote for the proposition that has to do with raising the homestead exemption up to $140,000 a year, they're not necessarily on board with this $20 billion water infrastructure plan. And I was told about some polling that's been circulating among some folks who have a vested interest in this that shows that while this may enjoy big support in cities like in Houston, here in Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, et cetera, and it may have support north of 60% in some of those big places like Harris County and Bexar County. But in places like West Texas and Deep East Texas, it faces opposition. Forgive the pun that this proposal is underwater as far as the support. And if it goes down, it would maybe be because of that. Now, I want to be careful how I say this because I want to say what I mean. I can't make a prediction on this about whether it's going to pass or fail. I don't know that, but I do think that it's concerning to a lot of the Republicans who have really pushed in on this, they voted for it and have talked about it a lot, that they're not exuding confidence at all that this is necessarily going to pass heading into, election day with early voting underway. And look, it's a low turnout election. And when you have some of those groups coming out against it, that can impact the vote, right? I mean, people see on their Facebook pages, they see their local county Republican Party saying, don't vote for this, or in Houston, where there are a lot of Republican votes, even though they just have more Democrats in Harris County. But there's a lot of Republicans there, too, who are active in elections. And when they see their local conservative newsletter saying to vote no on this thing, that's the kind of thing that can tip the scale. So we'll see how this turns out, but I don't think anybody can say for sure right now. One other thing I should say about it is that there has been some public polling that indicates that up to 75% of Texas voters do agree that this proposition, Prop 4, should pass, but only when they have been told, when they learn that it would not establish any new taxes and that it's not going to dictate which water projects are going to get the money first. But I should also say there hasn't been a sustained campaign to let people know that. And that's the reason that there are a lot of the supporters right now who are doubting that it might pass.
I look at this, and there's 17 amendments on the ballot. And the legislature has gone, and look, we've had some lawmakers who have come on. But for the most part, the governor, the lieutenant governor, except maybe on, some Facebook post or Twitter post, have gone pretty silent as far as going out there and doing any type of rah-rah go and vote for these constitutional amendments. And I wonder, is there a strategy or no strategy whatsoever, or just a, hey, we approved them and we think you're going to vote for them just because we approved it? Because I look at every conservative group that I've seen, Scott, that at least sends out emails or does these little, voter guides. Yeah. I don't believe I've seen one yet that says to vote for the water thing. Just about every conservative group that I've seen, I could be wrong, and I probably haven't seen all of them, but on at least the big ones, which are mainly based, by the way, in cities off of I-35, they're all saying vote against because of the lack of oversight. This is infrastructure. Infrastructure should be done, via legislative session. There should be more oversight. There shouldn't be a constitutional amendment. I personally understand that argument, but we're not talking about potholes here, and we're not talking about roads, which can eventually be. We're talking about water, and if your city doesn't have water, your city's going to die. Your city's going to dry up. It's going to go away. People are going to leave. But that's not something I'm hearing from lawmakers. And Senator Perry, he was one of the big champions of this. And I don't know, maybe he is going around and doing a lot of different town halls, but it just doesn't seem like from the lieutenant governor and from anyone else that there's been a big push out there publicly. Am I wrong?
You're right. Okay. No, you're right. There hasn't been, and I can't speak to whether they have a strategy at all here. But what I can tell you is that this is different from the way some similar proposals have been handled in the past. When Joe Strauss was the Texas House Speaker years ago, as a prime example, when the SWIFT Fund was originally set up, that was one of the original mechanisms to try to fund some of these water infrastructure projects. It was my understanding that Speaker Strauss and his team viewed that kind of stuff as legacy projects. And so it wasn't just that they would, have the House and the Senate vote on something. And of course, it's a 2/3 threshold in the House and Senate. Republicans and Democrats voted for this. And of course, they whipped votes to put it on the ballot so that Texans could have the chance to weigh in. And when Strauss's team was in place, what Strauss would do is he would spend significant cash out of his leadership fund to run a campaign to try to pass these things on the ballot. And you just don't see that this time around. No big push from GOP leadership to get it across the finish line. So I don't know what they're thinking, Chad, but I can tell you that is very different.
Is it that we just have too many of these, you think? Too many of these amendments?
There is a frustration, and you may hear this from some of your listeners. There is a frustration that I hear from voters across the state who think that, and I think there's something to this, they think that there are too many instances in which lawmakers in Austin kind of kick the big decision to the voters instead of make the decision themselves. And there are certain ways that this kind of infrastructure could be paid for that would not require a constitutional amendment, right? There are different ways that they could do that. They could just allocate $2 billion and send it over to the Texas Water Development Board and say, you pick which projects we're going to fund with this. There are other things that they could do that would not require Texans to vote on it. And I do think there may be some just weariness among voters, who might say that maybe they wouldn't say it exactly this way, Chad, but I might say it this way, which is to say that there's a reason that voters, put people in place, their representatives in the Texas House, their senators in the Senate. They vote for the governor. They vote for the lieutenant governor. The members vote for the speaker. There's a reason that we have a representative form of government. And I think a lot of voters would appreciate it if those elected leaders would handle these decisions, in Austin, because the word leader is right there in the job description. You make the decision instead of us.
Final thing I want to ask you about this, and I don't know if you've gotten this question or not. I've seen it posed a few times from both Republicans and Democrats, because you do have to have a 2/3 majority to get this on a Texas constitutional amendment. It's not that easy to get, this on the ballot in the first place. How is it that, because there are a lot of Republicans going around and saying, vote for all these are all good. Like you said, the governor was saying these are all good. How is it that Republicans and Democrats can unite, Scott, and put these issues on the ballot when they seem to fight over so many other things?
Really good question. I do think that it comes back to what we were just talking about, which is when it comes down to some of the really tough decisions and look, some of these things have to be done by constitutional amendment. For example, the increase in the homestead exemption. That has to be done that way because of the way that the Constitution addresses taxation and the way that all of that works. But some of the other things could absolutely be handled at the Capitol in Austin. Decisions could be made. Different funding mechanisms could be, concocted. They could come up with different ways to do this and simply do it through legislation. But I do think that it is the case that one of the places in which there's broad agreement among Republicans and Democrats sometimes is that they'd rather the voters make those decisions than they have to do it themselves. And so it's a great question. I think that's really kind of gets to the heart of the reason. Yeah.
So I was last week I was on a podcast and they brought up the Texas Senate race. And another reporter who was on there had brought up that Republicans are trying to goad Jasmine Crockett into running, and I just laughed about it, going, that would be great. You tell us now, because this seems like she's actually entertaining the idea of running for Senate. Scott, what's going on?
Yeah, so she was asked on a show on Sirius Radio, I think last week, and she was asked about what she was going to do as far as whether she was going to continue to run for a congressional seat in the Dallas area. And the reason for the question is because, of course, some of those districts have been shifted up a little bit after that redistricting battle that played out at the Capitol over the summer with the Democrats breaking quorum and all of that and then coming back. Her district was altered some, and so her answer was simply that she was keeping her options open, that she could run for re-election to Congress, or she might take a look at running for U.S. Senate. Without any specific inside info, I'll just say I do have reason to think that she's seriously entertaining jumping into the race. One of the things that she did say in that interview that I think, and look, she's quite the, when it comes to showmanship in politics, there are, folks on the Democratic side and the Republican side who are really good at that. And for the Democrats, she's one of them who excels at that. And, it's not just that she goads Republicans, calls the president names and all that sort of stuff, but it's also that she speaks to what a lot of Democratic voters really want, which is somebody to, quote unquote, fight MAGA, fight what they see as right-wing extremism, and that's why she's able to be such a prolific fundraiser, and it's why she leads in the polls in the U.S. Senate primary in Texas, even though she's not even in the race. If you look at the numbers, it's reflective of what she said in her answer. She knows what these polls look like. In the primary, she would beat any of these people. In fact, she would be beating Beto O'Rourke, who has been seen as a folk hero on the Democratic side, and he's not running either, right? But she would beat James Tallarico, the state representative from Central Texas. She would beat Colin Allred in the primary, former congressman from Dallas. But in the general election polling, the numbers are flipped, right? And, you have Big John Cornyn, who at this point, he would cruise to re-election against any of the Democrats on the board, just about. And you have them battling it out on the Democratic side. And, of course, there's a GOP primary as well. We don't know that Cornyn's going to be the nominee. We don't know that at all. I think that if it's going to be Attorney General Paxton that he faces, maybe the hardest time for being elected to the U.S. Senate in the fall, even though I still do think that would happen. But for Representative Crockett, she would be way behind any of the Republicans that she'd be up against. And I do think that's because she would run a campaign that would solely, I think, only be about turning out Democratic voters, trying to get them to vote for her as a Democrat, when all of the other Democrats who are running, Allred, Tallarico, et cetera, they want to make the case that there are enough disaffected Republicans that at least a significant number would cross over, vote for one of those Democrats to at least make it competitive against a John Cornyn or a Ken Paxton or a Leslie Hunt.
All right, real quick, what can people find over at quorumreport.com?
We've got all this for you and more covered in real time, always 24/7 at quorumreport.com. Click free sign up there on the homepage, and you'll be in the loop.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate your time.
Talk soon, Chad.
That's Scott Braddock, editor of quorumreport.com.